Yay!
Wow,
I told you I was ready.
The last 10 minutes has been hilarious here. Sorry you couldn't witness any of that. What is up, everyone? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 265. Happy Monday.
It's Tuesday.
Oh, man, you even told me beforehand.
Right before we went live, I said to Ethan, don't forget.
It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
And I laughed it off how would I ever mistake the 2 days? Like I just did. Welcome, everyone, to Ginger Runner Live. Happy Tuesday. Excited about tonight's show because if you haven't heard, something happened this last weekend.
Was something going on?
Something was going on. The 2019 Western States 100 endurance run took place in Squaw and Auburn over the course of the weekend. And we were very fortunate enough to be part of the documenting of said race. We'll tell you all about that in tonight's show. And our guest tonight finished the Western States 100 and has this incredible story. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to bring her on tonight is her story is impactful, inspiring, and hopefully you'll be able to leave tonight's show with a bit of inspiration of your own to go take on some of the bigger goals that maybe you have your sights set on and just need to go out there and do it. So our guest tonight, Ladia Albertson-Junkans, will be joining us on the show, and I cannot wait to ask her about how her day went because it was incredible to witness. It'll be even more special to actually hear what went down between aid stations, during the times that we could not see. So sit back, relax, everybody. Get ready for Ginger Runner Live because the show begins now. No. Ginger Runner. Yay! Man, the stuff that happens behind the scenes on this show, it's hilarious.
We're super profesh.
We're super profesh, very prepared. What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 265. We appreciate you taking some time out of your busy Mondays to spend a little bit of it with us. And in tonight's case, it's a Tuesday. So thanks for enjoying The Bachelorette apparently last night. A lot of people talked to us about thank you for pushing Ginger Runner Live a day. They got to enjoy Bachelorette. So tonight, we appreciate you taking the time to join us. I'm excited about tonight's show because over the last 5 days, Kim and I have been abroad. And by abroad, I mean just
in
outside,
our car,
outside of Washington State. We drove down to California to document the Western States 100, particularly one story. Our good friend Caitlin Gerbin, Northwest Badass, was down there.
We have Caitlin in the chat room with us.
Do we have her in the chat room tonight?
We have Maria in the chat room.
Fantastic.
We have Chris Thornley in the chat room. There's all sorts of people in the chat room already.
Basically, we were down there documenting our good friend Caitlin, the movie, and all the stuff that we're going to create as a result of this event. We'll talk about maybe later in the show, but definitely to our Patreon crew, they'll get a good idea of what we're creating and why we chose to create this sort of thing. Otherwise, we're going to create this cool piece that you'll all be able to enjoy on this YouTube channel here very, very soon. A lot of stories, though, take place at Western States, and we just wanted to highlight one of them tonight. 369 runners started this incredible endurance run. It's the oldest 100, the first 100-mile race. We've talked about it on the show dozens of times, so there's lots of past episodes where you can go and find out the history of Western States, the history of some of the runners and stuff like that. But this year was a super special one. We feel that the fields, both women and men, were just incredibly stout, and we really wanted to be a part of that, be there and kind of witness it, document some of it. And I would be remiss without mentioning some of those stories tonight. Of course, out of the 369 starters, there are, of course, 369 stories to be told. From the front of the pack to the back of the pack, Jim Walmsley setting the new course record. Clara Gallagher passing Courtney Dauwalter.
Jared Hazen also coming in under the old course record as well.
All top 10 women finished, I believe. No, I'm sorry. First 3 women finished in under 18 hours. All 10 men finished in under 16 hours. It's just Scotty Mills with his 20th finish there. He ran his first race, I believe, in 1988. Before many of the top 10 men were even born. Like, there are so many incredible things that happened this year that I just wanted to mention that up top. We're going to focus on one story tonight with our guest, Ladia Albertson-Junkans, who I'll introduce here in just a second. She's an incredible Northwest badass as well. Has run for the U.S. team, trail running and all that. She just has this incredible resume. She also has been she was really, really fantastic friends with Gabe, who we've talked a little bit on the show before, and I want to find out about kind of Ladia's connection with Gabe and how that story played out and how that affected her running of Western States, since it's very recent that Gabe passed away, and again, we've talked a little bit about it on the show, but she has inspired both Kim and myself in what we've learned about her and her story and her journey, and Ladia can speak on this a bit more tonight. We thought it would be a good opportunity to talk a bit about that, talk a bit about how Ladia took that inspiration and just did this incredible 100-mile race, her first 100-miler, her first time at that distance, and just crushed it. So before we introduce Ladia and talk all about Western States 2019, we have some people that we'd like to thank at the top of every episode. First and foremost, our Patreon subscribers and supporters. They are the reason we're able to do this. Ginger Runner Live, all of our reviews, our films. We were able to travel down to California to document Western States because of our Patreon supporters. So we just want to take a moment at the top of every show to thank them. 3 individuals in particular at that top tier. They are incredible help for us. So a big shout out to Chris Lee in Hong Kong. He and his company Trailblazer. They showcase the trails in Hong Kong. They're a great organization if you find yourself over there on vacation or for races. Reach out. They'll showcase or they'll show you where to go to get the best trail runs, some of the best views, all that good stuff. So Trailblazer is the organization, and Chris Lee, ultra runner himself, is the man behind that. Rick Bjarnason and his team at cheekymonkeymedia.ca. Rick is an ultra runner himself. I can't wait to follow along with Rick's journey because Sinister 7 is coming up this week, and he is running that. Very excited about that, as well as Fat Dog 120 later this summer. So Rick's a stout ultra runner, and his whole team at Cheeky Monkey Media are stout web designers. They redid the gingerrunner.com website, so I like to give them a shout out at the top of the show as well. And finally, Brian Sands, who we've talked about and had on this show multiple times. He's on this amazing running journey. He's lost over 100 pounds, ran his first marathon, first 50K, currently training for even bigger distances. Just an inspiration and an incredibly kind, generous human who has not only volunteered for Tiger Claw, but inspires many to pursue their own goals and dreams. It's a really neat thing, and he's a huge supporter of the show. So shout out to those 3 individuals. Thank you for the support, and thank you all of our Patreon supporters.
And also a very quick shout out to all our Patreon supporters that we actually got to meet in person this weekend. A lot of you guys were volunteering at Western States this weekend, which was really cool.
It was really cool to see so many faces and being able to put those faces to the names that we see every week in our live chat room and in our comment section and stuff like that. It's so cool for people to come up and say, hey, I've been watching your videos since 2012. I'm a huge fan, or, this inspired me to run my first 50K. And here I am at the start line of Western States. Like, that sort of stuff is crazy. We got to meet the guy who was number 1 on the wait list.
Yes.
In Squaw.
We met him on Thursday in Squaw, that he traveled from Georgia. And at that point on Thursday, he's like, I still don't know if I'm getting in tomorrow, but we made the trip.
And I was like, trust me, this is probably going to be worth it. Like, just stick around. He's like, well, no, by tomorrow at 1. That's when the bib pickup shuts down. He got in. So we should find out actually tonight if he managed to finish States.
I don't know if he did.
I don't know either. We literally just got back late last night, so it's been a bit of a blur. Without further ado, remind everyone that we, of course, are live. Kim, you're in the chat room.
I am in the chat room. So if you guys have questions for our wonderful guest, Ladia, please ask them in the chat room.
Yes. Speaking of Ladia, again, this was her first time at the 100-mile distance. It just so happens to be the biggest stage on Earth. Pretty incredible story. I can't wait to introduce her. So let's do that now. Without any further ado, Ladia Albertson-Junkans.
Yay!
Hi, guys.
How are you?
Hi.
First, are you awake?
I think so.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Has it been... So I remember after my first 100, how it took days. I mean, it took much longer than that, but it took days for me to even sort of get out of that foggy brain. Where are you at right now, just a couple of days removed from your first 100?
Well, I actually feel like I was semi-productive at work today, so I feel like that's a good sign. The brain's coming around. I'm still hungry all the time, and my feet are really swollen, but other than that, I actually think I'm feeling pretty okay.
Have you been able to eat?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, that took me days and days to actually get the calories in.
Yeah, you were like, I'm super hungry. I'm going to buy everything. And then you're like, I'm not going to eat for a few days.
I didn't eat anything for days. So what was your first, what was the first food that you had after you finished Western States? Like, what was it that you craved?
Oh, well, actually, I don't know if I really craved anything. We did do the breakfast that they had at the track, which was really delicious. I had some of those pancakes and eggs. And then I fell asleep on the cement block in the stadium. And my crew put an umbrella over me, and I passed out instantly and woke up underneath a really nice shaded umbrella.
That's not a bad way to wake up. So let's talk a little bit about your story, Ladia, because we had you on the show about 6 months ago. You had just earned your golden ticket, and at that time, I remember you were really excited. There was some nerves involved, but for the most part, you were just really excited to sort of toe the line amongst one of the most incredible female fields. At that point, we didn't really know who was going to participate, but we knew that it was going to be good. What was it like sort of over the last few months preparing for this, the big dance, this big race, where many of your friends, Caitlin Gerben and other friends that you've run with in the past are towing the start line, but then also just some of the best in the world? How did that sort of take hold?
Well, I was really excited to get that golden ticket. And I think, as we talked about before, my motivation for that was really seeing it as an opportunity to pay forward the gift that Caitlin had given me, being her crew and pacer the past 2 years at Western States. And that had really just changed my perspective on ultra running. I already had really loved it, but Western States showed me what a team sport ultra running really is, especially at the 100-mile distance.
Right.
And that just drew me in even more than everything else I already had. So I was super stoked that I got that golden ticket and that I could bring a new group of people to this amazing event and share that magic with them. And, maybe it would inspire them to do something they never thought possible, or pursue a big dream or something like that. So I was really excited. But to be honest, the training didn't end up really being much of a priority. Just kind of as those months went on. Well, first of all, I actually did Boston Marathon. And so that was kind of the first thing that I was really setting my sights on. And the way I had looked at it was Boston training could actually be a good foundation to build from for States. I'd take a little break after Boston, and then I'd switch back over to the trails and do a little bit more trail-specific training. But shortly after Boston, Gabe started getting really quite sick, and my priority, of course, was spending as much time with her as I could. And there were also a couple events that I wanted to do with her and her Brave Like Gabe Foundation. There was one in Waco, Texas, and then one in St. Paul, Minnesota, her Brave Like Gabe 5K. And so there was just a lot of travel happening, and training wasn't necessarily a priority. I was still getting in the running, but not necessarily the structure or the intensity that maybe I would have otherwise. So that was kind of my lead up to States. But I was still always very excited about the opportunity and knew that it could be a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's just such a hard race to get into. And I don't take for granted the fact that I had this opportunity this year. So I definitely still wanted to make the most of it.
You talk a bit about Gabe, and just as an outsider sort of watching, I know that you and her have known each other for a long time. You mentioned before the show, before we started, since 2004. Is that what you said? 2004. You ran together in college and raced a lot together and all that sort of stuff. Can we talk a little bit about sort of your relationship with Gabe and how that changed over the last few months, especially? It's always interesting as an outsider being inspired by someone who you haven't met. So I'm just really curious how you, as her great friend and someone who has known her for so long, how that sort of affected you.
Yeah, well, I think you're certainly not alone, Ethan and Kim, in feeling so inspired by her from afar, whether you met her in person or not. It's been really cool as her close friends to see just how many lives she's really touched and just the scope of her impact. And there's so many people throughout the running community and beyond who didn't necessarily have the chance to meet her in person, but who felt deeply connected and deeply moved by her story and deeply inspired too. So I just want to say that, like, you're not alone in feeling that way, and it's really awesome to see.
And I mean, I'm not to cut in, but also just across all disciplines of the sport, you know?
Right.
So trail running, road running, marathon, short, long distance. I mean, it's really fantastic how much her message and inspiration has sort of spread like ripples. We talked about that, like just sort of ripples. It just keeps going and going and going. It's really, really neat and special. And I think that's probably a testament to her character, of course, that you can speak on. So sorry, I just wanted to point that out.
No, and thank you. And it completely is. Well, and she has inspired many cancer patients to try running for the first time in their lives. People who are on chemo or getting active cancer treatment are doing their first 5K. And that's something that's been really cool for us as her friends to see, being part of her events, going to these races and having people share their stories like that. It's just so incredible.
Yeah. How the last few months then, when you got the news that things weren't going great, how did that sort of how did that sort of shift your priorities, and what made you even start States? Because States was so, I mean, she passed away very recently, a couple weeks ago, and States was so close. Like, what was going through your head, I guess, at that point? Because that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, I'll actually start by saying that I feel like for the past 10 years, so she was diagnosed 10 years ago with a rare and incurable cancer. And it was kind of really from that moment on that I also wanted to make the most of our time together. I had lost my stepdad to cancer actually like a year and a half before that. And for me, it was just, you just don't know how much time someone's going to have after they do get a diagnosis like that. And so I think both her and I sort of recognize, like, you just make the most of the time that you have, and you don't take any of that for granted. And I do feel like for the past 10 years, I've done that to the best of my ability. And so even when things started getting really tough for her, there was no question in my mind at any point that I wasn't going to prioritize my time with her. But that's how it had been really for the last 10 years. And then in the more recent months, I guess we already kind of had these things on the calendar, which was great. And she was always planning things to look forward to, because that was a really important part of her kind of keeping her own morale up and her own spirits up with all the uncertainty that she had going on. And so we had already had these, the Waco trip and the Minneapolis trip. And actually she had been out here in Seattle in January for a Cycle for Survival event that a group of us friends all came together to do with her in support of cancer research. And that was actually that was our last run together when she was out here in Seattle. We did her long run, a 12-mile run on the Snoqualmie Valley Trail, and she was actually feeling pretty good, and she was starting to feel like her fitness was coming around again. And then she went back home to Minneapolis, and it kind of just was like one thing after another, and just things were just not going well. And yeah, I guess there was no question in my mind that whether I would do States. I mean, if something had happened the weekend of States, there's no question in my mind that I would have been wherever I needed to be be with Gabe. But if I was able to run Western States, I was going to make the most of that opportunity. And I think one thing that maybe I carried with me during that time, and I had the chance to give the eulogy at her funeral, and one thing I talked about was a couple weeks before she did pass, she had confided in myself and our friend Mal that the doctors were worried about her. And, at the time she had said it wasn't necessarily short term, but maybe like 3 to 6 months. And so I had asked her, well, how do you feel given what the doctors are telling you? Of course, expecting her to be devastated. And I should have known better, because Instead, she just said, it's not what I expected, but I hope I can adjust. And that's really how she lived her life. And she didn't expect to be a 22-year-old diagnosed with a rare and incurable cancer, but she adjusted. And actually, the day after she was diagnosed, she ran a PR in the 1500 on the track. And, she didn't expect to be diagnosed with a second cancer less than 2 years later, right as her running career was taking off. But she adjusted. And she didn't expect to learn about this 4-pound tumor on her liver just weeks after running 15:19 for 5K, but she adjusted. And I think the other part of that too is like she just never fought her circumstances, but she did fight for what made her feel alive. And so I've really taken that to heart, and I feel like it's kind of our responsibility as people who want to continue on her message to follow her example in that way. And like, you can't fight the situation, but you can fight for things like an amazing opportunity to run 100 miles from Squaw Valley to Auburn in the company of 369 other amazing individuals and their crew and their pacers and all these volunteers who have sacrificed their weekend to make these dreams possible, and the race organizers and all the people following along from afar. It's just like, that's the kind of thing that she fought for. And, that to me, it was a no-brainer that I was going to go out there and do the same.
I feel like that message is something that was really, really clear, learning more about her and her friends and people who have lifted her up and lifted up Brave Like Gabe and that sort of thing and helped spread that. And we see these waves continuing to go out and out and out. And the one thing that I'm seeing is that people are wanting to live and embrace the moment more efficiently and fulfillingly. And it's a really neat thing. And you're touching on it there. And I thought that was the one thing that I took away from learning about her, even again, having not met her, but it's like, damn, she's living her life and sucking every ounce out of it. And that is such a beautiful thing. And like, it just helps me realize how much having health and having family and friends and loved ones near you all the time is such a blessing. And to suck that life out of it, just enjoy every bit of life. And it's a really neat thing. Sorry, Kim, you pulled across some questions here from the live chat room. So what do we got?
Yeah, great question from Caitlin in the chat room. Caitlin says, prior to the race, Ladia encouraged others to join from afar and run miles with her in honor of Gabe and her foundation. Can she tell us about that and what that meant for her during Western States?
Certainly. Hi, Caitlin.
I think we know Caitlin.
I've heard of her.
Also, I did want to say, this is a little off topic, but I wanted to thank you guys, Ethan and Kim, for traveling down to Western States and being there for all of us, because it makes such a difference to see friendly, familiar faces at a big event like that, where you also can easily be overwhelmed by the distance and kind of the goal that you have set before you, but then also to document Caitlin's story, because obviously Caitlin is very near and dear to my heart, but she's also one of my biggest inspirations on the trail. And so I'm really excited that other people will get to hear her story and be inspired by her like I have been inspired. So thank you.
Yeah. And real briefly, Kim and I said the same thing about seeing familiar faces, because it's so easy to be overwhelmed by, it's great to meet new people and meet people that we haven't met in person before, but there's something about like, there's Ladia. Okay. There's a familiar face. Hey, Ladia. And just kind of hang out for that 30 seconds or 1 minute and just be like, I feel like I'm in Seattle just for a brief moment, and then, chaos. So we totally want to reflect that back to you.
Yeah.
But sorry, Caitlin, we promise we'll get your question answered.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. And actually, that kind of putting it out there like that was really inspired by a conversation I had with Justin, Gabe's husband. Time doesn't exist anymore really for me, so I don't even know when the conversation happened, but sometime in the recent weeks, Justin had just been talking about his passion for continuing to run, but really use his running to continue to raise awareness and funding for Gabe's foundation and carry on her work. And he really challenged me to think about how I could do something similar. Because another thing that Gabe really led by example was making something beautiful and powerful out of a really bad situation. And that's certainly what Justin is doing now. And, you know, he lost his best friend, partner, love of his life, his world, right?
Mhm.
And like the least that I can do is try to also bring in some support to her foundation through my little journey from Squaw Valley to Auburn. So I already knew that I was going to be running with and for Gabe at that event, but he really encouraged me to just kind of put it out there and see if other people wanted to join me or if other people would have a couple extra dollars that they could donate. And so I did, because it was kind of scary to put myself out there. I'm not used to doing that. And you feel like, well, I'm going to feel silly if nobody wants to do this with me. But I was just really touched and overwhelmed by the response. And people were, of course, so wonderful and beautiful. And the community that Gabe built just by being herself is so positive. I mean, I just don't know if I've ever seen anything like it. And so now I've had this amazing privilege and opportunity to become a part of that community that she built and be touched by the people who have been so touched by her story. So there was really positive response to that. And I do think that that gave me even more strength to carry myself all the way through to Auburn. I definitely feed off of other people's energy. So knowing that there were a lot of other people out there who were rooting for Gabe and I to get to Auburn, that meant a lot.
Did you feel like you were with Gabe during the race?
Yeah, I did. And there were so many cool moments. One thing in particular that was so cool is, like you talked about, Ethan, how Gabe has really touched the running community across all aspects and disciplines of the sport. And I mean, she was obviously not a trail runner. She didn't even ever do necessarily a trail race,
Right.
but there are trail runners who know her story and know who she is. So like Casey Lichtig, the moment she got into squaw, saw this amazing rainbow. And I had told her a couple days before that the Casey Musgraves song Rainbow was one of Gabe's favorites and that was so special to her. And so Casey, had shared this photo with me of like Gabe in the sky, and it was incredible. And then when we were running through the high country, Casey and I were talking about Gabe, and Nicole Bitters, said that she had been so touched by Gabe's story. And when Caitlin and I were running together for those 20 miles, we talked about how we could feel her there with us. And then I met a guy who knew Gabe from a brief time she had spent in Texas, probably 7 or 8 years ago now, and he was volunteering at the top of Devil's Thumb. So it was just like all of these little sprinkles throughout the day. Oh, and when Lucy passed me, she cheered Brave Like Gabe and said, like, you're doing this for Gabe, and really like gave me this great morale boost. And it was so special. It was like other people were also feeling her there. It was just really great.
There was something about like you and your crew too that just kind of felt this amazing energy the whole time. Like anytime you'd roll in and you'd see the crew sort of do the F1 formula racing, taking bottles and doing all that sort of thing. But there was this really cool sort of energy that was exuding from your crew and from you guys. Like it was really neat to sort of see that you were running for something, for someone, with someone. It was really special. And that's another reason why I thought tonight would be a really great chance to chat with you, is because your race was so unique amongst these 368 other stories. Or again, just a testament to everyone who was out there racing, as everyone's story is very unique. And there was just something about, like, I needed to see Ladia when she was coming through. We would stop and wait and just see how it went down. I know that we still have a lot of live questions. Let's get to one of those, and then I want to talk about how states played out.
Sure. Question from Nathaniel. Nathaniel says, Ladia, you described that when Gabe was in the hospital, you'd run continuous laps around the hospital. How do you think running impacts yourself and others?
Yeah. I think that's an example of how running was really a form of prayer for me during that time and still is. And, I think running can be so many different things for us at different points in our life. It can be whatever we need it to be. And for me, lately, it's been prayer. It's been a way to share my strength and also just to show my support, especially in a time when there's nothing tangible that any of us can do other than love one another and be present. And running felt like the right way for me to express that. And it also is how I feel close to Gabe. And when she was in the hospital, I didn't feel like straying very far from where she was. And so running laps around the hospital, I felt spiritually close to her, but then also I was proximal. So if, and I had my cell phone. So if I needed to just jump into the hospital, I was also right there.
I want to start talking about your first 100. Had you ever been to squaw? Had you ever I know that you paced Caitlin in the past, but had you ever gone to the squaw part of the race?
Yeah, definitely. Because I had really been part of her crew at least through mile 80 and then paced from 80 on. So
got it.
I feel like I got a pretty good crew experience as well.
Because we've had friends that are like, oh, I'm pacing from Forest Hill, so they only go to Forest Hill and pace from there, because there's a lot that happens before then that can be really draining. So for you, this is your first time showing up as a runner of states. How was that experience? How were those days leading up to it? Getting your bib and checking in and getting the photo, like all that stuff. How was that for you?
Oh, wow. It was magical. And also, Thursday, Friday went by so much faster than I expected, in part because, to my own admonition, I really did not do a lot of planning ahead of time, in part just because I had a lot of other things going on. Sure. And I didn't allow states to take priority. Thankfully, I had all my gear. I just hadn't really figured out what was going where and how logistically the crew was going to be moving throughout the day. And then as we were talking before the show, Ethan and Kim, just like, it's such a big reunion going to states. And now that I've been racing for a couple of years and I know more people, it was so much fun to see old friends, new friends, make new friends. I mean, you'd go over to the village for a 20-minute errand and you'd be there for a couple hours. So Thursday, Friday went by really fast, which is helpful information. If I'm ever lucky enough to do it again, I will plan a little bit more in advance. Yeah.
And the morning of the race, getting to that start line, watching that countdown clock click down, hearing the shotgun, you're looking to your left and your right, and you're amongst just some of the coolest, most badass ladies in the sport. What's going through your mind? Is being competitive, is racing even there? Is it just experiencing the 100-mile distance? Is it taking it easy? Like, what's sort of the strategy going into this start?
I didn't have a strategy. Full confession. No, really, I was just really looking forward to spending a lot of time with Gabe on the trail with nothing to do but run. Again, with everything that had been going on for the weeks leading up to States. States was really the first time that I just had space to feel whatever feelings I was going to feel.
Sure.
And I honestly didn't even have an idea in my mind of what kind of a time I was going to run. Again, full disclosure, thankfully, Caitlin is very organized and detail oriented. I literally just stole her spreadsheet from the years prior and plugged my name in instead of hers, so that my crew had some sort of plan for the day. And
who's Ladia Gerben?
Yeah. There were definitely a couple of those. Yeah. Thank you, Caitlin, by the way. So yeah, I was excited to get going and be on the trail. And then the run up to the escarpment was just beautiful and so perfect. I mean, there was this big pack of women, and we were just having a good time, saying good morning. It just like, it felt so good, and it was just like hanging out with your buddies and then turning around and seeing this amazing sunrise and sharing a summit hug and then heading down the other side. And some people just took off, and I was like, all right, okay, like, here we go. We're at Western States.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was really great.
It's interesting to look at some of the footage. There are a number of photographers and videographers that were up at the top of the escarpment, and there's a great shot of like Casey Lichtai coming up and turning around for that sunrise. She's experienced it multiple times, and rather than like just sitting there and watching it, she's like grabbing you and grabbing all these other women and just like, let's enjoy this together. And it's a really cool moment. It's interesting to also then look at like the men's side because that doesn't happen. I'm just curious, like, what did that feel like? Did you feel like?
Are you sure Jim and Jared
and be like, hey,
like
dude, look at this sun.
Maybe they did. They might have been up there before any of the photographers are ready.
Yeah, they might have done multiple trips or something. How did it feel for you? Sort of the first time getting to the escarpment and seeing that sunrise, and yeah, what was that moment like for you amongst these friends? It seemed like
incredible.
Everyone was friends.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was. And yeah, I mean, there was no question about just turning around and hugging your friends. And actually, part of me, like, I started going back down the hill to like hug the person that was coming back up, and I was like, you need to go back down the hill. But yeah, and I think that's part of too, just remembering that, okay, we have this really long journey ahead, and we need to make sure to take it in along the way,
right.
And to just, take in the fact, like, I remember when I ran with Sunny, Eric's daughter, at Broken Arrow last year, and we got to the top of the highest point, and I told her, okay, we're going to stop here, and we're going to turn around, and we're going to take a look at the view. You see Lake Tahoe and the Sierras. And I told her, like, you need to make sure when you're trail running that you do this, and like, you don't get so caught up in, whatever your goal is, that you don't stop to take in the beauty. So it was really cool that even on the biggest stage with the most incredible trail runners in the world, that they still take the time to take in those moments. And just, I mean, it's just like one small example among a million of why the day is so magical.
Let's get to another live question.
Yeah, a great question from Maria in the chat room. Maria says, we never had any doubts that Ladia would finish the race, no matter what it took. Did she ever have doubts during the race?
I did. There were moments I was worried that I wasn't physically going to be able to get to the finish line. I was just having some really bad stomach issues, and so I did have those doubts. I did. But I really just kept focusing on the fact that, like, Gabe had never given up, and this running 100 miles pales in comparison. It's not even on a scale even close to what she experienced. And so I can get to that finish line, But yes, there were definitely doubts.
We saw you roll into Robinson Flat with Caitlin. It seemed that you two had been working together for some time. Caitlin's obviously a friend of yours, another Northwesterner. What was that experience like to share miles with a friend, a training partner, someone who you actually get to share miles with all the time, but this time racing each other on the biggest stage?
So awesome. Yeah, we had talked ahead of time quite a bit about how awesome it would be if we could run together, but we both wanted to make sure that we ran our own race, and I certainly didn't want to hold her back because I knew she was in a place where she could run much faster than I probably would be able to. But also getting back to the fact that I didn't have a plan or a strategy or a time in mind, the kind of the double-edged sword of that is I then easily got swept up in the excitement of the day, and I fully admit that I made all the rookie mistakes in the book, and I was definitely out of my league those first 30 miles, but I also wouldn't change a thing because the chance to run with Caitlin is like irreplaceable, and those 20 miles that we spent together were incredible. And even though my legs were completely trashed by mile 50, and so was my stomach. It was just like, all right, well, that's how my day is going, and this is what it is, and I'll figure it out. I'll adapt on the fly, and I'll adjust. And running with Caitlin was just so great. It was really great.
There's the notorious section, the canyons, that in years previous gets very hot. In this case, it's still hot. Like, I remember the day still being warm, but it certainly wasn't remotely close to how it's been in the past. That being said, it still took its toll on almost every runner because hot is hot. You know, there's 120 and then there's 95. It's still like really, really hot. So for you, coming into Michigan Bluff and like Devil's Thumb and stuff like that, is that when things started to go south? And do you know what happened and how did you resolve it?
Yeah. So Caitlin and Kat, Drew, the three of us, which also shout out to Kat because she's an incredible runner and also an incredible person. My hydration pack stopped working just after Duncan, and Kat stopped because she wanted to help me figure it out. And I was like, oh my gosh, girl, like, keep going. You're running great. You don't need to stop and help me. But it just reflects her character, and she's really awesome. So the three of us were together. I think it was Last Chance it's called, right? Before you go down the canyon. And then I had to stop to deal with some stomach issues, and I kind of got behind them. And then it was really kind of like after that it was sort of like I kept getting slower and slower, and the climb up Devil's Thumb was slower and slower. So yeah, that's probably where things started to get a bit rough for me.
Did you know, had you experienced anything like this in ultras before? Did you know that you could get through it? Or at this point, was it a full on, let's try to find a solution and just hope for the best here?
I had definitely experienced the nausea before, actually at Bandera. I had experienced a similar nausea. So I knew that if I could just kind of slow down and take my time, hopefully things would turn around. And I was completely okay with that. And then also at the same time, as I think we all know, like, grief comes in waves and it is on its own timeline. And I actually did kind of start to feel like these waves of grief hitting me too, again, because I think it was the first time I really had space to grieve, and I was alone and I could just feel whatever I was going to feel. And so I was just kind of like, this isn't about a race for me. This is about being out here and being with Gabe and hopefully honoring her by doing my best. And so I just kind of, I rode those waves and highs and lows rather than pushing through them, which I think had I been in a race mentality, I probably would have tried to push through them.
Right.
Yeah.
So rolling into Michigan Bluff and Forest Hill, these aid stations are packed with crew, with spectators, with media, with people who are just screaming in your face and cheering for you and everything like that. What is that like as a runner, especially in your first 100? You're feeling like crap. You're obviously in a space where you're not only dealing with moments of grief and things like that and processing that in between these aid stations, but then also stomach and other issues. What is the barrage of energy and crews and spectators and all that? What is that like for you in this moment on Saturday?
It was so uplifting. I mean, the aid stations made all the difference. I don't know if I would have gotten to the finish line without the aid. I for sure probably wouldn't have gotten to the finish line without the aid stations. For one thing, just seeing my crew and then my friends, Megan and Mal, who came to spectate, and they're part of our really close group of friends. It just made a huge difference. And it was miraculous to me how I would be like trudging along by myself and like, I'm going to vomit, I'm going to pass out. And then I hit the aid station and all of a sudden I have this new energy bubbling up inside of me. Right. So yeah, it made a huge difference. Even though then, 10 minutes after the aid station, I'm kind of back to a low point, but that's okay. Like that's the beauty of those highs and lows.
And as the race goes on and on, I mean, it doesn't get any easier. Even as the sun sets and you have like river crossing and everything like that, you still have big climbs coming up to Green Gate. You've got the cool of the night, plus, trying to resolve issues that are still residual from the day. You are now beyond a distance you've ever run before. That unknown and those additional elements, how did you process that? How did you get through that stuff?
I just really stayed in the moment, and that being another thing that I learned from Gabe, like focusing on the moment, especially in her situation. She had so much to be afraid of when she'd think about the future. And I think for her, focusing on the moment was where she could find a sense of control, but also a way that she could make something good out of a really bad situation. And again, like running 100 miles is nothing compared to what she went through. I think it was an opportunity for me to just think about how amazing she really is, and how amazing it was the way that she coped with her situation and still found ways to share her gifts with other people and do good in the world. So yeah, it was just really, quite honestly, one foot in front of the other, and then just thinking about Gabe and Justin the whole time, because I didn't have a lot of extra energy to think about too many different things. It was like keeping it really focused on why I was there, and that was for Gabe and for Justin, and kept it at that, really.
Man, it's I just pushing through all of that to finish a race like this it's a lot, and I know that 100 miles is really, really difficult, and especially one of this size and caliber and everything like that. It's a testament to your strength and your ability to get through a lot of that and to get it done. I do want to get to a couple more live questions here too before we start talking about what it was like to finish.
Yeah. Question from Jordan in the chat room. Jordan says, what was the lowest point of your race, and what was going through your mind, and how did you get through? And would you approach low points in future races the same or differently?
That's a really good question. What was the lowest point? To be honest, a lot of it is pretty foggy. I was joking with my crew afterwards that I was actually hallucinating quite a bit. And I told my husband early on Sunday morning, as we were walking very slowly, that if I had more energy, I would have been sharing all of the hallucinations that I was having. But that wasn't necessarily the low moment, because the hallucinations made things a little bit more interesting.
Do you remember any of the hallucinations? Those are great show material.
Yeah. There was one point where I thought there was a van perched in a tree, like between the branches, like a fancy treehouse van. And then I was like, well, that's silly, Ladia. There's not a van in the tree. And I was like, but maybe it's a really fancy treehouse. And then the closer I got, I was like, okay, maybe it's not a treehouse, but there's at least a house behind this tree. And then sure enough, there was nothing. It was just a tree. But I mean, the bushes were like an oven on the side of the trail, things like that. It was a lot of different things. But I think the low moment was just the times when I would let myself think too far ahead and realize, oh my goodness, you're going to be doing this for another 10 plus hours. Like at this rate, if things don't turn around, it's one foot in front of the other for another 10 hours. But again, it was like, I couldn't dwell on that. Just had to bring it back to like, you're here for Gabe and Justin, like just focus on that. And I think that is probably the best way to get through a low moment, whether it's in a run or in the middle of your day or an actual hardship in your life, not letting yourself get overwhelmed by maybe what is so daunting in front of you. So
what was it like to experience the sunrise? So that's one of the characteristics of a 100-miler is being able to run through the night and seeing the sunrise. What was that like?
Amazing. And we stopped at an aid station at like 4:30 in the morning, and I had a quesadilla and some chocolate milk And it was the first time in like 10 hours that I didn't vomit after eating. And so the day turned around for a number of reasons, because I finally could keep food down, and then the sun started rising, and Adam, my husband, made the perfect joke. He said, "You're going to finish in the daylight just like Jim Walmsley." So, I mean, what more could you want? Yeah.
What a great way to sugarcoat it. Like, I love that. Coming
But
to
actually,
that, go ahead.
I was able to run the last 7 miles.
So you did, you turned it around.
I did. Well, something turned it around. I don't know if I can take credit for it, but
chocolate milk and quesadillas, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And a good joke. Approaching the track, running the last mile from Roby Point through the neighborhood. You've done it before with as pacer, I'm imagining. You've seen it. So how was it running it for yourself? Did that cross your mind of like, this is my Western States experience? Like, was that weighing heavy, or was it an emotional time? Was it simply, I just need to be done? What was that experience?
No, it was such a celebration. And it wasn't for me. It was a celebration for Gabe and Justin. I was just so happy that I got to that finish line for them, because that's all that I was worried about the whole day. I honestly didn't care about my race. You know, it was just like, I want to get to that finish line for them. And I don't even know why. There were moments in the race and I was like, Ladia, why are you doing this? Like, it's not going to bring her back. It's not going to change the situation. But I just really, really wanted to do that for them for some reason. And so getting to that track just felt really great. And it also is fitting because Gabe loved running on the track. So I feel like she would be really pumped that the 100-mile race ended on a track, even though I was not going even close to as fast as she could have track, but it was still a track.
It was, I can only imagine, a very, very special moment for you and for Gabe, and to experience that track run towards the end. It was an incredible day to witness and to sort of see again everyone who crossed that finish line and seeing just sort of what it meant to every single person. And Ladia, we're just so happy for you and what you did out there, that you did this race and you finished this race and you did it so selflessly, is a really beautiful thing. And it's a really important sort of message. And I'm really, really happy for you. And an incredible finish too. Let's not deny the fact that finishing Western States isn't an incredible accomplishment. 26 hours, 40 minutes. Ladia was 31st female. And what did you learn out of this 100-mile experience, your first one? Are you taking anything away? Would you do it again? Like, what did you learn?
I would definitely do it again. And I learned, well, and I think this is a message from Gabe, that we can do hard things, and we especially can do hard things when we do them for something bigger than ourselves. And that was such a driving force for her to make something positive out of her bad situation and to pay forward, because she really did focus on her blessings in her life. You know, it would have been easy for her to feel overwhelmed by the hardship, but instead she chose to focus on those blessings, and she wanted to pay them forward to other people and hopefully build a more promising future for people in similar situation as her. And so for me, it was like running 100 miles is really, really hard, as I think it is for most, probably all people. But again, it's not even on the same scale as what other people are actually enduring in terms of hardships in their life. But we can do those hard things, especially if we do it for something bigger than ourselves. So that was really, I think, my big takeaway from the day. And it was incredible. And I want to say congratulations to everyone who started, all 369, and then I think it was 319 finishers.
Yep.
And I wanted to say that I loved watching the golden hour on the track, and Heather McGrath, who's a Portland, so PNW person. It was so fun watching her finish. And then I think it's Lane Simonoshi was the final person under 30 hours. And I just wanted to again, recognize how many incredible stories there were that day. Not even just the runners, but the crew, the pacers, the volunteers, the race organizers, everybody who was watching from afar, who had a stake and a reason to be following along and feeling inspired. I just feel really honored that you wanted to talk to me tonight, of all the really thousands of people who you could have talked to. And for me to be able to talk about Gabe, which is something really important to me. So thank you.
Of course. And again, I think the message of her living her life to the absolute fullest and you doing the same. And I feel like that spreading that is one of the best things we could ever do for mankind. And this weekend inspired both Kim and myself. We talked a lot about it yesterday on our drive up. We spent a lot of time in the car. But just how much inspiration that we were able to soak up from the weekend. And that golden hour, you're right. The golden hour is just this incredible 60 minutes, 59 minutes and 59 seconds, really, of runners coming to the finish line, just hoping that they can cross before they're cut off. And it's a magical time, and you're witnessing people doing exactly that. They are spending every ounce of energy in those last 60 minutes pushing to reach a goal, living in that moment step by step. And it is a distilled down version of that message. Of all the stories tonight, this is I think one of the more important ones that I wanted to talk about. And I'm really honored that you would even be able to talk about it, because Gabe passed away very recently, and of course it's tough to talk about it, I'm sure, and for you to do that on the show in such a public forum is also really wonderful, gracious thing. So we appreciate you sharing a little bit of that tonight. So Ladia, huge congratulations to you, your crew, your pacers, to everyone who started Western States 100 this year. You're a champion. Really great finishing rate. 319 people finished that race. Only 50 weren't able to. And as a testament to just the strength and the ability of everyone that was out there. There was, again, countless stories from that race. I just wanted to take a second to recognize, of course, the top 10 finishers from both female and male sides, because those performances are just mind-blowing how fast they were. In 10th place on the women's side, Corinne Malcolm, out of San Francisco, just an incredible runner, and it was really neat to see her throughout the day. The jockeying back and forth with positions was just so amazing. Addie Bracey, Kat Drew, Nicole Bitter, Caitlin Gerbin, Camellia Mayfield. The Caitlin Gerbin, Camellia Mayfield finish line sprint destroyed me. I want this to be about me.
It's not. It's about these wonderful women.
Oh man, it was so cool to see those two athletes just, to the line. It was so crazy.
And so many of the women were so close in proximity.
Yes.
It was insane.
And our top four, Beth Pascal, Casey Lichtai, it was great to see her get back there, Brittany Peterson, and Claire Gallagher. Claire Gallagher, yes. I'm going to post a clip to social media tonight of her coming out of Green Gate. It is one of the most delightful moments I got to witness throughout the entire day. Claire in the zone, having just passed Courtney, telling her pacers and crew to say thank you to spectators for saying good job. It's just so Claire. It was just wonderful.
Spoiled it.
I did, but it's people who watch this show. I like them to get the spoilers in advance. Congratulations to the top 10 women, of course, and the top 10 men. Again, all under 16 hours, because that's not crazy. Kyle Pietari, Jeff Browning, so cool to see him still finish top 10.
Yeah.
Pat Reagan, really cool to catch up with him after the race as well. Stephen Kirsch, Gediminas Grinius, I believe they just call him G2 or G20. Just a badass. Mark Hammond, Matt Daniels, Tom Evans, second place Jared Hazen, and first place with a new course record, Jim Walmsley. Jared Hazen also under the previous course record, but still Jim Walmsley with that 14:09. If we see a breaking 14 in the coming years, it's going to be crazy. A 13 XX on Western States. Come on, that's not. So congratulations.
And also a shout out to Ian Sharman as well.
Yes. He suffered an injury the week of, managed to heal that up, get out there, and still get it done. He, with his 10-time finish, 10 finishes in 10 years, all under cumulative less than 7 days. So he ran 10 Western States in less than 7 days time cumulative, which is an astounding figure. And again, Scotty Mills with his 20th finish. Just so many stories from this race, so much history. So we just wanted to take a second to recognize all of them. But I wanted to end this show, Ladia, with one last question to you. What was one of the coolest or best stories that you remember from this event? So we have all these amazing finishing times and stories from throughout the race. What was one of your favorite stories that maybe you experienced out there between aid stations or at an aid station or at the finish? What was one of those cool moments for you?
I would say watching people get their buckles. Because it's so rare. I don't know if I've ever been to a race that acknowledges every finisher individually in that way. And I just think that's really special and really cool. And every single one of those people deserved that moment of getting their buckle and being in front and feeling just the gravity of what they did, and having that acknowledged in that way. So I think that is right up there with one of the cooler. I mean, everything was so amazing, so it's really hard to pick out one. That sticks with me right now for some reason. So.
Well, we cannot thank you enough again for joining us on Ginger Runner Live tonight. Thank you for sharing so much of your story and Gabe's story. Can you go ahead?
Oh no, go ahead.
Can you let us know where people can either contribute to the Brave Like Gabe Foundation or can follow you on social media and so they can find out more information? Basically, help us find ways that we can help.
Yeah, you can go to bravelikegabe.org, or if you follow me or her husband, Justin Grunwald, on Instagram, we both have links to donate in our profile. You can also go to her Instagram page, and there's links to her foundation website there too. So.
Thank you so much, Ladia.
Thank you guys, and thank you everyone who was listening in tonight. Y'all are so wonderful.
I agree. Everyone that joined us on tonight's episode, we cannot thank you enough for tuning in and watching or listening to the podcast. Of course, we will be updating the podcast this week with all of the most recent episodes. You'll be able to download them and listen to them on the long run. So you can be inspired throughout those miles. But of course, before we end the show, we have a new segment where we like to recognize members of the community for crushing their goals, conquering their races and things like that. In this case, we have one that's pretty special and pretty close to the Western States 100 this weekend as well. So it is a segment that we like to call our GR Crew Member of the Week. Kim, who is our GR Crew Member of the Week?
Our GR Crew Member of the Week this week is our wonderful friend, Gretchen Walla. And I want to give Gretchen a shout out because Gretchen was at Western States this weekend, and Gretchen crewed and paced, in her words, her hero, Heather McGrath. And she says it's a weekend I'll never forget. And I just want to add that Heather did finish in 29:59:01.
With 59 seconds to spare, Heather came around the track and finished the Western States 100. It sounds like it was a day out there. She did it.
Yes.
It was an incredible thing to witness. Gretchen was there to help. So big shout out to Gretchen. And you know what? Let's throw Heather in there too.
Yes.
Because Heather did some of the work out there. So yeah, congratulations, you guys, on being our GR Crew Members of the Week. And a special moment just to recognize all of our GR Crew members who were out volunteering and helping, crewing and pacing. You're all honorary members this week just because you spent so much time dedicating yourself to others this weekend. And that is a part of what we love and want to see more of. So congratulations to all of you guys. And thank you so much for making Western States 100 so amazing and memorable to so many people. That is it for tonight's episode of Ginger Runner Live, episode number 265. We are going to continue an after show with our wonderful guest, Ladia. We're going to keep her just a little bit longer. So if you have residual questions for her or find out more about kind of how the weekend played out, please join us in our after show. It's very easy to do. All you got to do is go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. For as little as $1 a month, you get to join us for all of our after shows, all of our guests. You get to listen to all of the archive versions with our guests from years past and future. So it's a really cool thing that helps us out. The lower level of $1 and all the way up. So cool. That's it, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another Ginger Runner Live. Lots of videos dropping, including the film that we made about Caitlin Gerbin, which will be coming soon. Get out there, train hard, race harder, and party the hardest. I know I am. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.